N29-20. The Humboldt County Board of Supervisors meetings are being held virtually. You can participate in the Zoom call-in by calling the Zoom phone number, which is located on the screen and on the front of the agenda. So Ryan, will you please do roll call?
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Madrone?
Here.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Here.
Supervisor Bohn?
Present.
Supervisor Wilson?
Here.
And Supervisor Bass?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, now that we're all here, let's move on to the flag salute. Ryan, please display the flag. All right. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. At that point, whoops, sorry, my screen just went away. So, just a little reminder for those of you who would like to call in and make a comment on any of our agenda items today, do so and then press *9 at the beginning of the item you're interested in talking about. And when your number is called, press *6 to unmute yourself, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. One of the things we want to tell you is when you are watching us either on TV or on the screen, the phone is actually 30 seconds or so ahead. So please do turn off the volume on either of those devices. And once you're on the phone, just listen on the phone and actually don't even look at the pictures because our mouths are moving, but remember, it's a delayed time. It's very confusing. So one of these days we'll get this right. And then we'll switch back to not having Zoom anymore. So that's probably a dream to not have Zoom anymore. All right, so those of you who've been to these meetings know that I'm pretty strict on the 3-minute time limit because everyone should have the same amount of time to talk to the board. And so when you get to within 30 seconds, you'll hear this sound. Whoops, it didn't make the sound. Ryan, I need technical. Okay, there's a sound that goes ding, and if it doesn't go ding, I'll say you have 30 seconds left. And that means it's time to wrap up your comments because you will be muted at the end of 3 minutes. So don't take it personally because it's just how it is and it's nothing personal. Also, I think it's important to have breaks. So today we will try to take a break prior to the 11 o'clock time set. Doesn't always work out, but that is my plan at the moment. So at this time, I'd like to go to our CAO and ask if we have any modifications to our agenda.
Good morning, Chair Bass. There are no modifications to the agenda today.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent calendar.
And is there, okay, we have a motion that's been seconded. Let's see if we have anyone who'd like to make public comment. Again, if you want to comment, press *9. And we have no hands up. So we will return back to the board. And Supervisor Wilson, I just saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that on the item, which is having to do with appointments to the Fire Safe Council, that we are appointing Chief Justice McDonald.
Justice?
Sorry, Justin. Chief Justin. Sorry, I was reading it. So,
Did we?
I must listen to the.
The Supreme Court nominations.
There you go. And then also also had the Rod Mendez is also supposed to be in there for a second tribal seat. I just wanted to make sure that that's clarifying. That's what we're doing today.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Wilson. Any other board members have a comment on the consent calendar before we vote? All right, seeing none, Ryan, will you please do the roll call?
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
Sure.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right, so now we'll move on to the public comment on items that are not on the agenda. And like it says, this is for items that are not on our agenda. So if you speak under this time frame, we will not take action or discuss the matter you bring up, but you are more than welcome to have your 3 minutes. Let's see if we have anyone. If you're interested, press *9 if you'd like to comment under public comment on non-agenda items. We do have one hand that's just raised, and if you are the person with the last 4 digits of 0151, you can go ahead and speak.
Good morning, Dottie and Graham Russ.
Oh, sorry. Welcome.
Thanks, from Southern Humboldt. So a number of things have been coming to light about what is happening with code enforcement and the planning department as well. So it seems that there's not a whole lot of continuity between what the planning department seems to say we can do and what the code enforcement thinks we can't do. So I really think I mentioned last week that I thought it was a good idea to get an ombudsman program going. So I know you're planning on hiring some more people. And if one of those new hires, or maybe somebody that's in the department already, could be part of the solution-based instead of what can't be done, because I just went to the planning department again on Monday and found out there were all kinds of things that I could do rather than just the things that I couldn't do. So I think that we really need to shift gears from let's make everybody a loser, instead let's make everybody a winner. So as a teacher myself, I know that there's 2 ways to teach, and I hope that you folks will encourage everybody that works for the county to take the approach of success and not failure. So that's one thing. The other thing is that there's this parking lot issue that's coming up, and we heard about the planning commissioner fellow resigning quickly because of what was going on. So it was in Eureka, but one thing is that I think that we really need to have boots on the ground people talking and embracing how you're going to do rehabs and how you're going to do housing for people, because I've made a lot of mistakes, and some mistakes that I haven't made have backfired anyway. And I would like to share some of my successes and some of my failures, because it's a very hard place to be a landlord in Humboldt County. And so I really encourage you to think these things through, and instead of doing too much at one time, to instead try to do something successful. And if you don't have a caseworker where you have low income housing, then is that my 30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, it is. I stopped it for a while you asked the question, but yes, you have 25 left now. Okay.
So anyway, without a case manager really on top of some of this stuff, I'm telling you, you got to do that. And even at the trailer park in Phillipsville, we're not having people up all night long running around doing things like it was 20 years ago when we didn't own it. But the bottom line is it takes every single day somebody being there, driving through, talking to the people, seeing if they need to talk to somebody, if they have transportation for meds.
Thank you, Dottie.
Yeah,
right,
thank you.
Dottie.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, there's no more hands up. So we will now move on to the next item, which is our special presentation from DHHS regarding COVID-19. And I'll turn this over to Dr. Hoffman and his team, whoever is joining us today. So Michelle's back. But, welcome, Dr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bass. Thank you, Supervisors. Today, I want to start off with where we're at in the pandemic in Humboldt County as far as case counts. It's a number we're really accustomed to, and it's worth visiting the history of case counts over the history of the pandemic. We continue to see mostly a downward trend in cases over the past few months, but overall case counts still remain higher than they were at any point before November 2020. Before November of last year, cases were under 100 per month, with the exception of July and August, which saw 103 and 163 cases respectively. We saw peaks in December and January, over 900 cases per month, trailing off in February and March to around 300 per month. And for April, now about 2/3 of the way done, we're just over 130 cases for the month, and we expect to finish up the month with over 200 cases based on current modeling. So you can see that we're still not back to where we were last summer, and there has also been a shift in who's getting COVID-19. What's remarkable is that we're seeing primarily cases in the young right now, with over 80% of the population who's 65 years and older in Humboldt with at least one dose of vaccine. The protective benefits of the vaccine are quite clear. Yet the youth are still susceptible, and the vaccine effort in the 16 plus age group is still very early, with those under 16 many months away from approval for their age group. Humboldt County Public Health encourages everyone who's eligible to receive a vaccine to do so now, do not delay, and this will help protect yourself and also help protect those around you. And vaccination opens up opportunity. These opportunities increase each week as CDC and CDPH update their guidelines for fully vaccinated persons. A person is considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after the last dose in the series. So for Johnson & Johnson, that would be 2 weeks after for just one shot. And for Pfizer and Madrone, it's 2 weeks after the second shot. And while all fully vaccinated persons should continue to mask and distance in public, there are exceptions to this. Fully vaccinated persons can travel without the need to test or quarantine. Fully vaccinated persons can visit indoors without masking or distancing with other fully vaccinated persons from another household, or with unvaccinated households that do not have someone who is high risk for COVID-19 severe disease. These households should continue to try to remain stable over time and try to limit to one household at a time. But fully vaccinated persons do not have to quarantine if they should be exposed to COVID-19. Rather, they should self-monitor for symptoms and test if symptoms arise. CDC and CDPH both recommend that if you're fully vaccinated, you should avoid visiting indoors without a mask or distancing with those who are unvaccinated and are high risk for COVID-19 severe disease. And so that, and again, even if you're vaccinated, you should avoid medium to large size gatherings, and you should continue to mask and distance in public and at work. Vaccination opens up more opportunities for businesses as well. There are venue and site-specific allowances if people are fully vaccinated. At sporting events, meetings, and other private events, if the group is fully vaccinated, they could sit with pre-assigned seating at the event with masks, but without the 6 foot of distancing. Private indoor events are only allowed by CDPH if the attendees are fully vaccinated or tested, with a fully vaccinated event able to sit in pre-assigned seats without any distancing. Visitors from out of state who are fully vaccinated don't have to quarantine, can visit with their family who are low risk indoors, unmasked and without distancing, and can attend local events that are closed to anyone from out of state who is unvaccinated. Vaccination opens many doors. So imagine crisp Humboldt evening, Crab Stadium, on a night that all those in attendance show proof of vaccination. You could be at full capacity within that vaccinated section, cheering alongside your friends and neighbors without having to sit 6 feet apart. A fully vaccinated section at Van Duzer Auditorium in Arcata or Fortuna High School Gymnasium could increase the capacity to 50% in the orange tier and 75% in the yellow tier. Again, allowing you to sit close proximity with your neighbors and friends you've been distanced from for the past year. This means seeing your favorite bands, theater, comedy, high school drama, middle school bands, youth sports with your family, friends, and neighbors sitting alongside is all possible with the vaccine. And now with vaccine much more widely available, we want to make sure the barriers are coming down. There are 2 websites that everyone in Humboldt County should be going to for information about COVID-19 vaccine appointments. The first is a state-based website called My Turn that our public health mass vaccination clinic started using a few weeks ago. Last week, we gave over 3,100 vaccines at the Arcata Community Center site using My Turn, and more than 6,300 vaccines over the past 2 weeks. That's more than 5% of the eligible population of the county vaccinated at our mass vaccine site in the past 2 weeks alone. Based on CDPH data, Humboldt County now stands at 50% of 16-year plus eligible population with at least one COVID-19 vaccine. Additional clinics across Humboldt County will start using MyTurn in the coming weeks. So please check the MyTurn website frequently, as there have been some glitches with the notification. And we have noticed that some Humboldt County zip codes do not point to all Humboldt County clinics. So we encourage you to enter Humboldt County instead of a zip code or address when prompted on the Let's Find an Appointment page of MyTurn, as that will point you to all of the Humboldt County clinics that are available, but some zip codes will not show those clinics. Other website to promote locally is a federal program called Vaccine Finder. This lists pharmacies and clinics that have vaccine through the federal COVID vaccine program and links to their respective appointment scheduling portals. Several pharmacies across Humboldt County are offering vaccine, and new appointments are listed daily, so check this website frequently as well. Humboldt County Public Health is starting up a mobile vaccination unit to get out to our homebound, our hard-to-reach rural areas, and other populations that are having trouble getting to mass vaccination sites, clinics, or pharmacies that are currently doing vaccination. Open Door and United Indian Health Services have also been doing mobile outreach to the homebound, homeless, and hard-to-reach populations over the past few weeks, and will continue to expand in the coming weeks as we continue to see more vaccine coming to Humboldt County. All of this is happening while we continue to reopen society. We're seeing more and more businesses open again or expand their operations as allowed under the Blueprint for a Safer Economy. Planning for events such as weddings, receptions, meetings, conferences, sporting events, graduations, commencements are all occurring now with increasingly detailed guidance from CDPH and Cal OSHA. These documents can be found on CDPH website, and Humboldt County Public Health, along with the JIC, will be putting together a local webpage for events and gatherings to point to the specific guidance from CDPH and Cal OSHA for each type of event planning. In the meantime, we must remember that COVID-19 is still out there. Variants of concern are spreading, and most of our population is still not protected with the vaccine, including many vulnerable. While Humboldt County has not seen any variants of concern other than the widespread West Coast variant, we know that California, the UK variant, B.1.1.7, is growing in number in cases each week. We've seen that what can happen by looking at Michigan as an example. So we must assume that even though we have not seen B.1.1.7 here in Humboldt, it's very likely here as it's found all over California. And it could drive cases up here locally, as we have seen in other counties and other states if we let our guard down too soon. So we take responsibility for following the guidance in public spaces with masking and distancing, capacity limits, and especially if we take responsibility to follow guidance for private spaces where the vast majority of cases are spread, we can keep the momentum of the vaccine effort one step ahead of any resurgence of the virus. In the past weeks, we've seen an increase in cases that can be seen by the increasing daily case count report, and our adjusted case count per 100,000 that is up from 2 per 100,000 last week to 4.5 per 100,000 this week. While these fluctuations are to be expected given the low overall numbers as well as fluctuations in testing, we are seeing an actual increased number of people who are mixing without precautions, leading to a true rise in cases over the past few weeks following recent holidays, gatherings, and other private events. We're seeing rises in cases in our youth, where precautions might be more strict in schools and on the playing field. We find those precautions not always being followed off the field or out of the classroom can lead to cases we are seeing now. Humboldt County Public Health urges everyone to follow the guidelines set forth so we can get to our benchmark goals by June 15th, removing the great majority of the restrictions in place currently. So there's a lot to rejoice for in this wonderful season of spring and rebirth. Get vaccinated to help open the doors to so much more activity with your friends and family, help keep businesses open, help to get us to our goal of removing the blueprint framework come June 15th and get us closer to the normal we've craved for 14 months. Wear a mask, distance in public, and get vaccinated as soon as you can get an appointment. If you are vaccinated, encourage your family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers to do the same thing so you can join together once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. Michelle or Sheriff, do either of you have anything you wanted to add right now? Okay. Well, let's go to the board for some questions. I'm sure there's some. I have a couple myself, but any supervisors have a question? I don't see a lot of, I need some faces back on the screen. I can't see people. I got 3. So, okay, I'll start with my question. Since you guys were a little slow today lifting hands, I have a couple of them. So someone asked me that they signed up for my turn some time ago, or I don't know exactly how long, but since then they've gotten a shot elsewhere. They're wondering if their name will just automatically drop off my turn because they still hadn't heard anything. And I think they're just trying to figure out what happens if you get your vaccination and it wasn't through my turn.
It's a great question, Supervisor Bass. So I don't think it would probably drop off of my turn. So that person could continue to get notifications as clinics become available. I would guess there's probably a way to turn off those notifications, just like any email list or text list. But the data does go into the state database called CARE, the California Immunization Registry. And so that would be recorded there and accessible statewide through any clinics or pharmacies in the future if that person needed that information.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think they're more concerned about having my turn waste time trying to connect with people who already have their vaccinations, but not as big of an issue. And my other question is, how are we determining who is homebound? I know I've been bothering you guys for some time about homebound. And so I was really glad to hear that we're doing, moving forward in that. But how can we help you determine what it is that actually lets you know who is a homebound individual?
Yeah, there's several different ways we're working on getting that list together. So we're working with agencies who work with homebound individuals like PACE, Area 1 on Aging, clinics who have their own list of homebound patients, or even, patients that are just, it might be difficult for them to get into an appointment or a mass vaccination clinic due to maybe other mobility issues or location, distance to a clinic. So, other ways we're working on getting in touch with those folks are through emergency services. So especially in the rural areas, a lot of people are tied into the emergency service network so that, if there's a fire or some other emergency in their area, they can be alerted and people know who are the homebound individuals so they can go to their house to help them get out in an emergency. So we're working with local fire departments and volunteer emergency service squads in the different parts of rural Humboldt County to identify those folks and get the word out when we go into their area.
Okay. All right. And then this isn't a question. I thought that article about San Francisco was great. It's one of the best things I've read, and it shows real spirit in the state to work together. And it was a really fun read. So I'm glad you sent it my way. So at this time, any other supervisors have a question or comment for anyone on the team? Supervisor Madrone and then Wilson.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Hoffman and Michelle and Sheriff Hansel. I just want to continue to thank you all for all your efforts. And I see now that we're going to be starting to organize more clinics in rural areas. I know you've been getting out to Hoopa and Willow Creek a lot, and now Witchpeck and Orleans, Petrolia, Honeydew. So thank you for all your efforts to try and reach out to those rural communities. I just want to say that myself, my sweetheart, and my family, most of us have gotten the J&J. And ours was over a month ago, and nobody's had any negative reactions. It's going really well. We feel really lucky to have gotten vaccinated and feeling good about it. So I'm just here to say to people out there, whatever is offered to you, please get it. It helps you, it helps everybody around you, and I'm all down with that. So just wanted to add that to the weight of asking people to join in as best we can.
Thank you, Supervisor Madrone. Supervisor Wilson?
Yeah, again, thanks for all of the efforts. And I just wanted to really talk a little bit today about the 441-5000 number and what the positive reactions I've gotten from people on that, and just keep reiterating that if anyone has a question just about anything, really. But in these days, like when people have asked me about, I want to get a vaccination, I just don't know where and what should I do, I said, call this number. And every one of those people has reported back to me an amazing service, that they have been directed and found a place to get vaccinated. And I just want to say, like, the 441-5000 number, that has just been throughout this entire year and more than a year, has just been invaluable. And in this moment, it's serving people in ways that I'm just saying, like, I've just been hearing nothing but good things about people's, interaction. They felt like people cared. They felt like that they were being given good information, and that they really, were directed in the right place. So I just wanted to thank you for keeping that service going and those things. And I know there was a little bit of news about what people are calling breakthrough issues, and I think that there was a number talked about, 10 people, but that was out of 30,000, which is still just extremely far lower than how many people would get COVID if they hadn't gotten vaccinated, by orders of magnitude. So it really is effectual, and that number will go down the more of us that are vaccinated, because quite frankly, the statistics of coming into contact with someone with the virus will go down dramatically as we get more and more vaccinated. So appreciate all your efforts, and hopefully we'll be moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Wilson. I appreciate that. And if I can take an opportunity to just address the breakthrough vaccination or the breakthrough cases in vaccinated people. This is fully expected and certainly something that we've seen in the trials and with many millions of people vaccinated across the country and the world. These cases are extraordinarily low. I can tell you that the ones we know about here in Humboldt County, those 10 that you mentioned, I know have all been either asymptomatic or extremely mild cases. And so that fits exactly with what we know from the vaccine studies, that, it doesn't prevent 100% of the disease, but the people who get it are much less likely to have symptoms or much less likely to get hospitalized or get sick. And especially have a serious outcome, such as, ending up in the ICU or, the worst outcome, which is death. So the vaccine is clearly working, and we will expect to see continued outbreak or breakthrough cases. That is totally normal. But, we are, can see the effects already of the vaccine and how it's affecting the case counts and the hospitalization rate, and so it's working. One other thing, just to address a couple of other points there that were brought up. Joint Information Center is still an amazing resource. They have a lot of information. If you're having trouble finding appointments, there are many appointments available right now in Humboldt County. And I think we are seeing a little bit of a difficulty of people matching to those appointments. And some of this could be a technological barrier. Like I mentioned, the glitch with My Turn, where you put in certain Humboldt County zip codes and it's not showing you any clinics. But if you put in Humboldt County, it does show you those clinics. On the Vaccine Finder website, that I mentioned through the federal government, for some of those clinics, you might have to increase your radius because we're in a rural area. It's set at 25 miles, but if you live, out in Bloxburg or Alder Point, that's not going to get you anything because there's nothing within 25 miles of there. So you have to increase your radius to 50 or 100 miles to see what all the clinics that are available. So we're working on that fix for my turn as well. We'll let everyone know when that's fixed, but also encourage people to look at that when they're looking for sites on Vaccine Finder. At this point, we know that pretty much everyone should be able to find an appointment within a few days or a week when they go look for it.
I have a question following up on the breakthrough comments that we just had and talked about. So if I'm hearing you correctly, Dr. Hoffman, you said that some of those are asymptomatic. So I guess my question is, if they're asymptomatic, why did they get tested? Or is testing something we should still continue to do even after we get vaccinated? I mean, I was trying to figure out if someone doesn't feel well, I can see them going to the doctor, but I don't know how we caught the asymptomatic ones. So I'm just wondering, is there some kind of like self-surveillance we should do and go in occasionally still, or?
So no, there's no recommendation for vaccinated people to get tested unless they have symptoms. But there are certain settings that are higher risk where we do test even the vaccinated folks. So these would be places like healthcare settings, especially in skilled nursing facilities and all other long-term care facilities. So there are some workplaces too that are required to offer testing as part of reopening, and that's in the new blueprint guidance. So that is offered to people, and so you might see some of those people do testing as part of that, even if they're fully vaccinated. So that's where you're seeing that from, though, is mostly healthcare settings where people are fully vaccinated and required to test.
Okay. Any other supervisors before we go to public comment? All right, I'm not seeing any. Let's see if we've got anyone. Public comment, press *9 if this is an item you'd wanted to comment on. And at the moment, there are no hands going up. All righty, well then we will go back to the board. And are there any last minute questions, or we're gonna let Dr. Hoffman and Michelle and the sheriff go back to work? Wow. Okay, I guess we will see you guys next time. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so, excuse me. Our next item comes to us as departmental from the County Administrative Office, and it's regarding the Measure Z recommendations. At this time, I'll turn this over to CAO Nilsson.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Today is our annual allocation of Measure Z funding, and we have recommendations from the Measure Z Advisory Committee. And Sean Quincy, our Deputy County Administrative Officer, will be providing the staff report.
All right, welcome, Sean.
All right, thank you, Chair Bass. Good morning, members of the board. Before your board today is the fiscal year 21-22 Measure Z recommendations from the Citizens Advisory Committee on Measure Z expenditures. During January and March, the committee met 5 times to release applications for funding and evaluate them, ultimately creating a prioritized list of funding recommendations before your board today. By way of background, Measure Z is a half-cent sales tax on allowable sales occurring within the county, including cities, and this is a general tax for public safety and essential services. Based on past trends and analysis from our consultants at HDL, staff is estimating that there's going to be a little bit more than $12.5 million in Measure Z revenue for the upcoming year. And of that amount, a little bit more than $8 million is dedicated to ongoing county staff costs, which funds 68 county staff. The committee had $4.5 million in funding available to use for recommendations, and the committee received 30 applications this year from various county departments and outside agencies. And those requests totaled $7.3 million. To evaluate the requests, the committee held 3 meetings to receive public input, solicit additional information from applicants, and to discuss various proposals. The committee went through 3 rounds of prioritizing votes, the first of which was a simple up or down vote on whether the application met the spirit of Measure Z language, and 23 applications met that threshold set by the committee. All of this work resulted in one list of all the eligible applications ranked by priority. And with $4.5 million available, this would fund 13 of the 23 eligible projects, including, and this is a partial list, roughly $2 million to the Fire Chiefs Association, $452,000 to the Sheriff's Office for radio infrastructure project, $440,000 to Kamau Medical Center for rural ambulance service, $390,000 to the City of Eureka, $351,000 to the City of Fortuna, $290,000 to the City of Arcata, $175,000 to the Public Works Department, $126,000 to Southern Trinity Area Rescue, and $151,000 to the Sheriff's Office for 2 dispatchers. And again, that's a partial list. The full list is available in your agenda packet today. So as the upcoming fiscal year goes along, staff will return to your board with updated revenue projections for Measure Z. And we hope that our projections are conservative so that we can come back to your board and let you know that there's more funding available so that you can fund additional projects. And should that occur, the committee is recommending that your board use this list to guide your allocation decisions. One final point is that your board wanted the Citizens Advisory Committee to evaluate whether they could look at developing a small grant proposal process to evaluate smaller grants. And the committee discussed it, and they said that they had concerns about the applicability of doing such a process, and that the spirit of the measure might be violated in the sense that there is not the funding to fund the highly rated public applications regardless of size. So the committee said that they are open to the board's direction as an advisory committee, but they said that they didn't feel that it was appropriate for any kind of action to be taken during the prior time period to evaluate applications. I hope that makes sense. And so with that, that concludes my staff report, and I'm available for questions. And I believe the chair and vice chair may be available. There are members of the committee that should also be on the line here should you have questions.
All right, well, I certainly, Chair, are you there? Glenn? I don't see a name on here, so they might be on the phone. Is that, if you're here? Ah, I see Glenn now. Glenn, yes, go ahead and speak, and then I'd like to make a comment after you talk. But welcome, Glenn.
Chair Bass, members of the board. My name is Glenn Zimmer. I'm the current chair of the Measure Z Advisory Committee. As staff has indicated, the process followed this year was very similar to that followed historically by the committee. Unfortunately, as a result of the Zoom process, the public interaction was noticeably less than we've had in previous years, but anyone who made the effort to try to attend the meetings was certainly accommodated, and we did have a low level of public comment. The structured list is similar to the one that we provided to you in the past and was reached by the same mechanisms that were reached in the past. There is one kind of sub note that I would like to make a suggestion on behalf of the committee to your board. In the course of the process of evaluation and going back and forth, the committee did ask, and certain of the applicants did offer to reduce their initial application amounts down to try to accommodate a greater dispersal of the funding to different agencies and so on. The most significant of those was the Fire Chiefs Association, which cut theirs from roughly $2.6 million to, I think it's $1.994 was the suggested award. The committee has been very stringent in the past about making sure that the applications and the budgets submitted to the committee align. And since this reduction was done on the fly during one of the committee meetings, the Fire Chiefs Association only had approximately maybe 40 minutes to try to align the revised budget with the application. In the case of the Fire Chiefs Association, it is all equipment. So since they were under huge pressure to try to itemize $600,000 in reductions in a very short period of time, the committee felt it appropriate to recommend to your board that were they to be a recipient based on the board action, that they be granted the capability to realign within their request to any of the items that was originally included in their application process. The vast majority of the request is for equipment and so on. So we think it appropriate to allow them to substitute items that show in the budget for other items that existed in the original budget based on the pressure of time and the courtesy of their reduction in an effort to make the committee's work more effective.
I just, Glenn, I really appreciate all your efforts and the whole team. And I have to say, Supervisor Bohn was right on last time when he said we should respect the work that you guys do and we shouldn't go necessarily shifting things around and moving things around. And I agree, and I'm really sorry in the past. I certainly want you to know how valued your group is. And so while I'm certainly open to any discussion today, I just wanted to say right up front what I just did, because I'm sure the committee was frustrated and has been a couple times. And so I do think Supervisor Bohn was right. You bring us recommendations, and I think those are, I appreciate that, and definitely will be considering them extremely carefully. So thank you for all your efforts and the group as well. Did you have anyone else in your group that would like to talk?
I've been brought in as a panelist, so I have a different access, I believe, than the balance of the community members. So you might want to look at your phone inputs and see if there's anyone on the phone.
All right. If you happen to be on the phone and you had wanted to talk about this, but it's not public comment, if you're on the committee, please press *9 to raise your hand. All right. We do have one. 0087 committee member. I don't know. Please let us know who you are and welcome. Press *6 to unmute, in case I forgot that. Welcome.
All right, thank you for the direction. My name is Nicholas Cole. I'm the 4th District Representative of the Measure Z Committee. I wanted to be present just to hear your process on this end of the side. But I also did want to echo the chairman's expression that public comment was extremely limited this round, and I was very concerned that they are starting to miss part of the process, and that we're not really getting a full view of what our citizens are wanting to prioritize. And so I wanted to put that to you guys as something to think about.
All right. Thank you, Nicholas. And thank you for your service on the committee as well. I don't see any other hands up for committee members. So do we have any, and I know we have at least a couple of the applicants on who may or may not want to speak at this moment, and certainly can after we hear from others. Any supervisors have a comment they'd like to make at this time before going to public comment? All right. Well, we're going to go to public comment. If this is an item you would like to comment.
Virginia.
What?
I'm sorry, I have my hand up.
Where are you? I don't see your, are you on? Wait, I'm sitting there going, I don't see your face. Sorry, that's the problem. Yes. Michelle, is that you?
It is.
Where are you? Okay, we have too many people on the screen. It's like, I didn't see you. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll keep it on your screen now.
Okay. Hi, Glenn. Thank you for all your guys' work that you do. I had a couple questions and I just wanted some clarification. I had gotten a couple emails about the Southern Trinity Area Rescue and also the Southern Trinity Volunteer Fire Department classified with the fire chief. And I was wondering if you could just explain a little bit how you guys came to that for them since they're not in Humboldt County.
Certainly. Both STAR and Southern Trinity Rescue are located probably 3/4 of a mile into Trinity County on Highway 36. The STAR organization, the Volunteer Ambulance services back to the west toward Fortuna, at least as far as Larrabee Valley is concerned. There's kind of an informal break line between Fortuna and STAR as far as ambulance response. So the committee felt that number one, STAR operates largely with volunteer personnel. They do have some paid personnel, and our particular contribution would fund some dedicated paid personnel that helps keep their staffing up. But since they are located in Trinity County, but actually serve a pretty significant area, the whole of Van Dusen Valley area and westbound on 36 from essentially Low Gap, we felt that it was important to include them in the process. As far as the Southern Trinity Fire Department, their request is included within the fire chiefs organization. The fire chiefs organization last year, in an effort to provide some support to that organization, actually pulled what was then an independent application into the Fire Chiefs Association application in an attempt to bring funding and try to keep that organization functional. The thinking being, again, that although they are physically located maybe a mile or so into Trinity County on Highway 36, they provide services back into the Van Dusen and then west on 36, again, pretty much towards the Larrabee Valley area. So the committee felt that was a valuable contribution to Humboldt County, even though they're located in Trinity County.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
And again, sorry, Supervisor Bushnell. Supervisor Madrone?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I also had a question for Glenn. I'm sorry to hear that there wasn't a lot of public input to the committee. I certainly got a lot of input myself. Each round, I get a lot of input from the community about roads, and folks are wondering why roads rarely get very much funding from Measure Z. At least from the calls and emails I get from my constituents, they tell me, it's a small sampling, but they tell me that they always thought that roads are absolutely a public safety issue, and they're wondering why it rarely gets any money from Measure Z. F and Oak Street, I mean, we've heard lots of testimony about the dangers there, and I know Supervisor Bohn has been working hard to try and find solutions there, but you know, so I'm just curious what your thoughts are, what the committee's thoughts are in regards to roads rarely getting any funding from Measure Z. And then I have a follow-up to that after I hear the answer.
Okay, let me try to address it. And obviously I'm speaking more from my own knowledge. The committee did discuss the whole process, and the allocation to roads is one that's been, you know, actively discussed over the history of the committee. The unfortunate circumstance is that the discretionary portion of the fund that's available to the committee, that does not include obviously the continually funded county positions, is straining against the applications that historically have received funding. I can speak personally to this from this is only as a member of the committee and not as the chair. Our feeling was that the cost of significant impact on the roads in the Humboldt County is so far beyond, the scale is so far beyond the capability of the Measure Z funds. I believe Mr. Mattson and usually advises your board that there are, I don't know, multiple dozens of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance and so on. And although we've supported certain focused efforts like the cleanup efforts along the roadways of trash and so on, and we've also focused on particular projects, chip sealing and things of that nature, just the simple scale of the demand on the roads makes it impractical for the fund to have much of an impact. I think there's also some sense that the SB1 funding should provide a new source of funding to the roads agency. But I think part of it, like I said, I think a large part of it is just the scale of the problem compared to the resources available to the committee, and it's basically a triage decision.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that response. And then my other thought here is I, like the rest of the board, very much value the work of Measure Z. You guys put in endless hours in reviewing all of these proposals and doing the work. And I'm not interested in shifting things around. I'm only interested in supporting your recommendations. But I do know that there's $9,000, almost $10,000 left in the potential allocations. And while I know that the city of Trinidad did ask for $79,000 for a half-time position, $10,000 would go a long way towards helping them. So I would just like to ask the board that maybe we could consider that. I see that Eureka, Arcata, Fortuna, Riadel, most of the cities did get some money for their police services. Ferndale's not in there, Blue Lake's not in there, but Trinidad did make a request and they didn't receive anything. I know they're further down the list, but I'll just throw that out there. Again, I'm not interested in shifting the rest of the list around, but just offering that as a suggestion for the possible use of that balance of a little under 10,000.
just in response to Supervisor, part of the decisions regarding these part-time funded positions are not fiscal ones, as it turns out. Sheriff Hansel has the capability, depending on the year, to either provide an officer, as requested by, as an example, Blue Lake and Trinidad. In some years, he's able to do that. In some years, he is not. So besides the financial aspects of it, there is a capability to staff issue that often plays a role in those allocations. And I believe that's the case in this circumstance.
Thank you, Glenn.
Supervisor Bohn. And then I did want to ask us, I don't know if Sheriff Hansel, if you want to say something, Supervisor Bohn will ask his question, but if you had anything you wanted to add to what Glenn just said, let me know.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect case in point of the sooner we can get back into chambers and they allow us to do it and everybody gets vaccinated, because Zoom, it did. I probably attend almost every Measure Z meeting, sit in the back of the room, because I like to hear the testimonies. And I had a conversation with Glenn previous to this meeting today. And, because I had questions like 7 years ago when we gave Kimwa their first $259,000 about being a private, entity and everything else. But Glenn explained it very well, and I understand. And in their application, they says till they can find a source of future funding, which would be taxation or parcel tax or something like that, or some way to fund it. He said it was a good way to provide services to that part of the county. And he also said the same thing at Southern Trinity, because when you get remote like that, and I sometimes feel that way about Honeydew Petroleum, but in all honesty, our roads, we hear a lot about roads because roads are easy to talk about. We got 1,241 of them, miles of them. But I think it's also a good time, Public Works, with everything, being a training ground for all the big construction companies, with the influx of the SB1 monies 3 years ago, which have been a 20 to 25% increase to budget. They are doing a pretty good job. We've got close to $6-8 million worth of FEMA money approved in the last few months. So they're doing their job over there. I would like to see more of this money go towards. I'd like to see, and I appreciate Supervisor Madrone, Oak and F, and I always relay Oak and F to the corner of Walnut and Fern. It took 11 years from start to finish to get that funded and done, and that's been successful. I don't think Oak and F is going to take that long. I know Tom has tried to get a couple grants for that, but the traffic counts have increased on F Street, and if you add a couple more burger shops or pizza parlors and a couple more stop signs, and Caltrans is now going to, Caltrans is planning on putting 3 pedestrian crossways on Broadway, kind of blinking crossways away from the lights so people can cross. So if anybody's driven on F lately, and I do every day, or Broadway, I do every day, you'll see the amount of traffic and the stop and go. And I know they say the lights are synchronized. The other night I got stopped at 7 of them. So they were synchronized against me. But I think Oak and F is, you'll see the signs out there, slow the F down. I think it's a fair ask. I don't know where we get it from right now, but I think it should be a priority. It'd be nice to get something in the first district, but I like the school resource officer and things like that. But I think when you look at the amount of time the Measure Z committee did, and thank you for Virginia for realizing the how much work and why I voted against the last 450 doing. These guys do a good job. Maybe we would have got the Trinidad officer out of that money, or another $250,000 to roads, but we did get some to roads. So anyway, I appreciate it. I'd like to see a couple things change, but I don't think the amount of effort and time that these guys went through it. I want to thank Alicia for bringing me my packet about a month ago or a month and a half ago and so you can read it at will and stuff like that. So again, thanks to the Measure Z committee. Besides that, if I could pay for Oak and F myself, I would, but I'm hopefully Tom's going to find some money with all this money that they're COVID monies and all this money that the government seems to get away, infrastructure monies and everything else. Maybe it'll be hidden in there somewhere. So thanks to the Measure Z committee, and thanks to the firemen, the Fire Chiefs Association for cutting back like they have. I know they where some of our rural departments are more stacked and have more equipment for their safety, wildland fire gear. And it's been so important, that wildland fire gear, because they have all been going out on the forest fires. So they're equipped and ready to rock and roll, and they've got new equipment to do it with. So I think what we're doing so far has done pretty good. So, and at the end of the day, if we're thanking people, thanks to the taxpayers of Humboldt County who support our public safety, law enforcement, and our Measure Z committee to spend this money wisely to make Humboldt a better place. We're trying.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Bohn. And I would say actually a good portion of your population is in the city of Eureka. So the first district does have a bit of benefit here as well. So don't think you're not. Yeah, Sheriff Hansel, I think you may have wanted to chime in on some of what Glenn said. Please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Bass. I appreciate Glenn and Nick being on the call here. You know, that the committee does do a lot to vet every single application to see if they pass the test as far as what the original intent was, the Measure C, ballot measure was all about. So, again, bringing it back to the ballot measure, public safety, roads, essential services is really what it's all about. And so I think you're going to see that as far as the snapshot there of everything that was prioritized by the Measure C committee. So I'm proud of our work, and I think it's wise to just follow what the committee has laid out there. As far as our ability to fund, one thing that we haven't done is provide money or supplanting existing services with this money. So Measure Z provides additional services, throughout the county. So we couldn't recognize Trinidad's partial funding because we didn't, number one, I don't have the staffing right now to do that split position between Trinidad and Blue Lake. We hope that, next year when Measure Z comes around, that we'll be able to do that. And with our staffing levels going up this next year. So that's something that I'll be working with Blue Lake and Trinidad to make sure next year when Measure Z comes around that we're able to fulfill that obligation. But yeah, and I just want to echo the comments about the roads. Roads, definitely is a part of Measure Z. And I think that's really the intent of when people voted for it. They want to see roads, improve. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Sheriff. If you're wanting to make public comment on this, remember to press *9, and you probably should press it right now. And at this point, any other board members have a question or any other comment before public comment? All right, and I did want to say, when Supervisor Bohn mentioned the packet that Alicia brought us, this is the packet. And the Measure Z committee is amazing to actually have gone through all this. They're quite interesting, but I'm glad I wasn't left to try to rank them all. So lots of work there. All right, we have one hand up at this moment. So if you have the last 4 digits of 0087, please press *6 to unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add in, this is Nicholas Cole, representative on the Citizens Advisory Committee. We really had an extensive discussion about our process and about what Measure Z is really about. And I really feel that we came to a pretty solid agreement that it's really about providing a bare minimum of service. And there's that need for service out there across a lot of agencies. And I really feel that right now we're really focused on personnel service and on ensuring that all areas of the county are served. I would love to see more money going to roads. I would love to have the opportunity to fund more applications. But to do that, we either need to increase revenues or we need to readjust how we're evaluating the whole process. And I don't think any of us really have the energy or the ability to do that because I think this process is pretty solid. So I'd really recommend to the board that they really do respect the time and energy that the committee has spent on this. And if we want to talk about roads, we might need to talk about it in a bigger scale. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Nicholas. And since you are part of the committee, I did not put the 3-minute timer on you. Just saying. All right. I don't see any other hands up. So, whoops, we have one now. If you are the person that has the last 4 digits of 4261, welcome, and you have 3 minutes. Press *6 to unmute yourself. All right. There you go. Are you ready? You there?
Oh, yeah, sorry. We've been having a little bit of phone issues this morning. This is Stephen Stake, Chief Operating Officer of Kamal Medical Center, and I apologize for joining a bit late, but we had to get on the some telephone issues that were going on here. That being said, I'm here to take any questions, but some of the questions preliminarily that I had received in regard to the ambulance base. Number one, just to specify that the funding from Measure Z is for the Willow Creek ambulance base. It's not designated towards the Hoopa ambulance base. So it is primarily operating out of Willow Creek and serving that area. The money that we request from Measure Z is prorated for that which is within Humboldt County. The increases that have been seen are not due to our revenue going down from the billing services. Last year, we had received a total revenue of that ambulance space for $242,000. Prorated for Humboldt County, it would be $224,000. This is for last year, and so would basically we ask for those funds, the Measure Z funds, to cover the shortfall of our overall operations, which are roughly about $530,000 for Humboldt County. The main increases in our expenditures were for recruitment and retention. We've had a very difficult time in regard to recruitment and retention of EMTs and paramedics, and the previous rate of EMTs of roughly around $12 to $13 an hour just was not able to do the job. And so we had to increase that to between $14 and $15 an hour. And then for the paramedics, of that rate around $16 an hour was not able to, really retain staff and have those emergency personnel available. So we have just increased to roughly around $17.50 an hour. And so that multiplied out by the year is the general increase that you see from our previous request. And so in that regard, we still have the hope of maybe working out other type of revenue systems. And if anyone has any good ideas or any partnership ideas, we're certainly willing to make that happen. But I guess I'll just pause right there and just say thank you for your continued investment in this community that depends so heavily on the ambulance services. And I'll take any questions if there are any.
All right, and thank you. And since you are one of the applicants, I was not going to make you stay to the 3 minutes. I would say if there's any other applicants on that want to make a comment, just let me know, and let's get the public commenters out of the way first, and then if any other applicants want to be there and available for questions, then we'll go there. But at the moment, I don't see any other hands up from the attendees. So we will go back to the board, and Director Matson, I see your hand up.
Good morning, Chair Bass, members of the board. Tom Matson, Director of Public Works. I do want to thank the Measure Z committee. We did cut our chip sealing and illegal dumping request in half, similar to other agencies when we were told of the oversubscription and application. Just note that Public Works does not use any of this money for staff. This all goes to material and equipment. So when we asked for $25,000 a mile for chip seals, that actually costs us between $50,000 and $60,000 because the rest comes out of our road maintenance personnel and equipment. We were not able to reduce our request significantly for the traffic signal at F and Oak simply because the vast majority of that is outside costs. And I know we have SB1, but as I've told all of you, that's about a third of what we really needed to catch up on our deferred maintenance on an annual basis. We still have a significant problem with deferred maintenance, and we'll continue to have that. And yes, we will be continuing to look at every other source that comes forward, especially for the signal at F&O, because that is a safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Matson. I do see another hand up in the attendee queue, and I don't know if you are 7411, and let us know you're here, and if you're an applicant or a member of the public, because this is getting a little back and forth here. So just press *6 to unmute.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm DDA Myers. This is my first time joining a Board of Supervisors meeting, so I was having technical issues to how to navigate that. I just wanted to speak real briefly, if I could, on the Measure Z funding for EVAST.
Okay. And that is you're one of the applicants?
I'm part of the team. It's under DHHS, but DA's office works with them.
Just trying to make sure I try to get all the applicants first. So yes, please go ahead, and I will not put the timer on you since you are one of the applicants, in case we have
questions. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of note that the collaboration between DHHS and the DA's office has been really important to the success of the prosecution of elder abuse cases. I am the one who charges the majority of these elder abuse cases and prosecute 50% of them. The other go to my colleague. And I wanted to just note, I know that statistically there might be a drop with the COVID pandemic and the number of cases that have been referred to the DA's office. However, I do expect that will be increasing after the people start reporting more and being out in the public more. I do know that there was quite an increase in the number of cases we saw enter the DA's office when we began this process and this collaboration. I wanted to just note that the collaboration between the DA's office and particularly APS has really aided in giving APS a direct line to us. I often hear about the cases that are going to be coming in long before the reports are submitted. That helps us also reach out to law enforcement and make sure that the reports are coming. And if it's outside of the area that the patrol deputy is familiar with, because a lot of these are financial fraud cases, we're able to assist them on the front end with getting what we need to have successful prosecutions. APS has been great in helping the DA's office get access to the victims and helping the victims directly assemble documents that are necessary, whether that be medical documents or bank records. All of those are really important for us on the front end to make sure we have a case that's viable going forward. They've also been able to help provide greater victim support because they are specialized with working with this population than our own victim advocates aren't necessarily have the same ability to do. Just wanted to briefly highlight one of the cases that I think that this collaboration has really been shown is the case of People v. Esterly. That case resulted in a guilty plea to 6 felonies. APS had assisted in alerting the DA's office and really constantly contacting law enforcement to make sure that this case was progressing forward and moving through the system. It was a fraud case that was over $1 million worth of fraud. They helped gathering up the documents, and I think that the collaboration really was successful in the prosecution of that case. So I just wanted to let the committee know a little bit what I'm experiencing on this end of things with the development of the EVAST and that collaboration.
Right. Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have the last 4 digits of 4951, let me know, are you a committee member or are you speaking as a member of the public?
An applicant.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Dale Unia, Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association. At the association, we would like to thank the Board of Supervisors for all the hard work that you guys do, but more, we'd like to thank the Measure Z Committee of all the hard work that they do. As you picked up that packet, I would hate to have to go through all that as well. The Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association would like to let you know a little bit about us. The last couple of years, we haven't brought out our annual report. And so I went back to 2018. And in that report, there's 597 volunteers and 75 paid employees for fire, other than the federal and CAL FIRE. So the Chiefs Association represents all of those fire departments out there in the outlying areas. The hours that we give for training, the hours that we give for incidents is just incredible. I was sitting there going through all the numbers. And once again, we would just like to thank you for all the support that the committee has given to the Fire Chiefs Association to make us stronger and better.
Okay, thank you very much.
And
whoops, go ahead.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
No, I was done. I was just wanting to open it up for any other questions.
Okay, anyone have questions for Dale on behalf of that application? I'm not seeing any hands, but thank you for the offer there. And I believe we have one more speaker, and I do believe that is Dottie as a member of the public. Are you speaking as a member of the public, Dottie?
Yeah.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that a lot of times when things are divided up, the amount of money that goes is not always, from my perspective, as important as it needs to be. So I know Measure Z gets tons of things coming in. We've submitted 2. One was for an emergency shelter, which was not funded. One was for a resource center that was not funded. So I know how many hours it takes to go through this Measure Z thing. So good for everybody to work on it. I do think that we need to make sure that we're getting enough applicants for Southern Humboldt, and that some of the money comes to Southern Humboldt. That's also true of many other agencies, including Section 8. So if we could all kind of keep that in mind and watch for those things coming in and encourage new people to ask for some of the Measure Z money too, I think it would be divided a little more fairly. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Dottie. Okay, I see no more hands up in the attendee queue, so we will go back to the board. Supervisor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Bass. I just wanted to also thank the committee for all the hard work, and I am in favor of moving forward. And I guess I'll just make the motion that we that we direct staff to take the recommendations from Measure Z committee forward in the budgeting process. I also just want to comment on we have talked periodically about a small grants program. I'm thankful that the committee discussed that. There's no expectation that they would be doing that sort of work in this round, and it's something that needs a lot more fleshing out to actually happen. And so we'll get there if we get there. But in the meantime, I'm fully satisfied with the work and thankful for the work that the Measure Z committee has done, and I recommend we move forward with that. And that's my motion.
And I ask you before we get a second on that, does that include the recommendation also brought forward by Mr. Zemer regarding letting the fire chiefs realign what they get since they had to make a decision in a very short period of time? It sounds like they want the opportunity to kind of realign what they're getting with that money. And if I'm not hearing that right, Glenn, let me know.
Yes, and I will, if I need to clarify that the recommendation for some flexibility with relationship to the proposal for fire chiefs, that'd be part of that as needed.
Okay. I saw Amy come back on. Do you have a question, Nia? Or no, you're good. Supervisor, is there a second?
I have a question, please.
How about second for discussion?
I'll second.
Okay. Yes, Supervisor Bushnell.
Supervisor Wilson, I was just wondering if you're addressing the leftover funds. Are we going to save those or allocate them?
I have no expectation to allocate those at this time.
Supervisor Madrone.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the motion. Very much want to support the committee's work. I also appreciate the discussion from Glenn about how the fixed amounts continue to grow, and eventually that will reduce the amount discretionarily available for competitive grants. We've talked about that before. I, for one, would like to put a cap on the fixed amounts, but not today. I still think it's a discussion we ought to have in the near future. But the other part I want to ask, Alicia, the 12 million that's estimated to be available, is that for 2021 revenues? Am I reading that correctly?
Supervisor Madrone, if I can take that question. I was staffing the Measure Z committee this year. The 12.515 million is for fiscal year 21-22.
Oh, okay. So it's an estimate.
Correct.
And I see that, it's gone up from 10 million last year. So again, the big crash of the economy we thought was going to happen due to the pandemic didn't actually happen, given that estimate, that it's actually an increased estimate over last year's revenues. So pandemic year, increased revenues. And of course, we know that sales tax is everybody was going around fixing their homes. It wasn't gas tax, that went down, right? But sales tax went through the roof. So that's just an interesting element in all of that. So, I realize Supervisor Bushnell did ask if your motion, Supervisor Wilson, included allocation of that balance of 9,500. When I look at the list that the committee came up with, there's actually really only one item that fits that amount, and it's the Public Works request for 10,000 to improve their PSA, to get information out to a broader segment of the community. I would be fine with making that recommendation because it fits really well. I realize it's down the list, but everything else is 100 or 200,000 or whatever. So the 10 grand's not going to do any of those other items. So if the board was interested, I would be willing to do that. But, if not, we can hold on to it, come back to this in the future when we see what other additional revenues may or may not be available like we did earlier this year. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Supervisor Madrone. And I do believe we will see some opportunity to distribute some more funds later in the year, but we'll go to the CIO for that in a moment. Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. Through the chair, that was my question to Amy. So this that 10,000 will just grow and we'll come back and be able to reallocate if there's funds available down the road?
Through the chair, yes, the allocation of the little over $9,400 could come back to your board either during hopefully a first quarter budget report or a mid-year budget report. And in addition, at that time, any savings that may be realized in fiscal year 2021 could also be allocated at that point in time as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yeah, as the motion maker, I do appreciate the request that Supervisor Madrone's put forward, but I will say that although, you know me, I'm not an absolutist on a lot of these things, I do think in this moment and on this subject, we might want to have a little more discipline. And so in terms of what we've been doing, and so I'm gonna stick with where we're at.
All right. Any other comments from the board before we ask Ryan to do roll call? And Ryan, you're clear on that motion?
Yes, Chair. It's what Supervisor Wilson had stated, and and the second part of it was just clarification for staff, is my understanding.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Supervisor Bohn?
Yep.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you again to Glenn. And please give thanks to any of your committee members who are not on here. And also thanks to the applicants for turning in, some great projects and with a lot of detail. It's amazing the things we need in this community. So we'll move on to the next departmental item. In fact, the next two come to us from Planning and Building. And the first is a submission of grant applications to the California Department of Housing and Community Development, their CDBG program. And Director Ford, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Good morning. Good morning, supervisors. John Ford and Andrew Whitney with the Planning and Building Department. What is before you is approval to submit an application for CDBG grant funding. There are 3 qualifying programs here. One is $145,000 for the Humboldt Senior Resource Center. Second is $250,000 to begin site planning work for an affordable housing project. And third is $500,000 for home buyers and a home buyer assistance program. What the board's action today would allow us to do is submit this application to the state, to the Department of Housing and Community Development, and then they would weigh our application and hopefully allocate the funds. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Excuse me. Thank you, Director Ford. Does anyone have any questions for staff at this time? All right, we'll go out to Supervisor Wilson. And before Supervisor Wilson speaks, if you are on the phone and want to comment on this item, it's a good time to press your hand now. Press *9 now to raise your hand. Supervisor Wilson.
I just jumped the gun there. I'm ready to make a motion on this if there isn't public comment.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead to public comment. There is one person at this moment. Again, if you're interested, press *9 to raise your hand and press it now. Don't wait. If you're the person who has the last 4 digits of 1320, press *6 to unmute and welcome, and you have 3 minutes. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
I'm one of the applicants. I'm from Humboldt Senior Resource Center. I'm Samantha Day, and I'm the Director of Social Services over here. And I just wanted to give you all a little bit of description about our proposal, if that's all right with the board.
Is it part of the... Okay.
Oh, yes. Go ahead.
But you have 3. I'm going to still have you under 3 minutes, I think, because usually, just give us a quick rundown, and so
can do that.
That'd be great. Supervisor Bohn.
Just word to the wise, we're voting to approve you now, so be careful what you say.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to put the point of
better. I'm just
yes. I just wanted to put the point across that really goes with the directive to serve underserved communities and kind of expand diversity, equity, inclusion. It's going to be the first program in our agency to have Humboldt County as its service area. Right now, most of our programs only go from Trinidad to Scotia and only as far east as Blue Lake. So we're going to be serving anyone who's eligible will be 55 and up, and we're already in the first phases. So we're already going, and our whole program is a fee-for-service revenue generating program that will be self-sustaining within its first full year of operations. So those are just a few things I wanted to point out.
All right, thank you very much.
Perfect.
You.
Yes. All right. I don't see any other members from the public with their hand up. So we will go back to the board. I had Supervisor Wilson, then Bohn.
Yeah, just want to thank staff and all the, partner agencies helping us move forward with these applications. They're just going to be leveraged for more benefit to Humboldt County. And let's just keep going on that. And so with that, I'll make a motion that we adopt staff's recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Madrone. Supervisor Bohn?
Well, I'm just always happy to see the home buyer assistance loan program. That helps a lot of young families. I mean, the way housing's going up, I don't know what I don't know if anybody can afford anything anymore. Hell, I couldn't even afford to buy a house. But anyway, I appreciate all the effort and time that went into this by staff. But that's a great program, and we know a lot of people that have benefited from it. So both in the county and the city. So thank you very much.
And Supervisor Wilson, your hand is still up. It's down now. Okay. All right. I don't see any other. Supervisor Bushnell, did you have anyone else have a comment? Nope. All right. Then Ryan, will you please do a roll call vote?
Yes, Chair. Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
Please.
And Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
It passes 5-0.
All right. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the second item from Planning and Building, and it's consideration of a comment letter regarding the March 15th draft of the California Board of Forestry 2021 amendments to the state fire safe regulations. And Director Ford, I'll turn this over to you.
Good morning. As the board is aware, the Board of Forestry has been engaged in a rulemaking process that does affect Humboldt County with fire safe regulations. We have been and continue to be very concerned about the implications of what these regulatory changes may do. And joining me today is John Miller with Planning and Building, and also Yana Balkovic with the UC Extension. And what we would like to ask of the board is that you authorize the chair to sign another letter that we've already sent to, but sign another letter when the rulemaking begins again, to express the county's concern with the implications of what the rulemaking could do relative to development within Humboldt County. Given the fact that the rulemaking seems to be stalled right now, and things could change when they initiate the rulemaking process, we are asking for authorization to make slight modifications to the letter that has been presented to you to address the circumstances at the time. That would be done under the supervision of the CAO, and obviously the chair of the board would be the one signing the letter and would have the authority to say that they're comfortable or not with those changes. We find it vitally important to express the county's concern and position relative to the rulemaking that's going on. Humboldt County is not alone in this. Most other planning directors that I've been talking to are also expressing extreme concern with the process that's being undertaken. We're also joining RCRC and CSAC in expressing concern to the Board of Forestry. With that, be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Director Ford. Are there any questions at this time for Director Ford?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mike. Supervisor.
Some summary of what those concerns are would be great.
No, I apologize. The primary concerns have to do with the road requirements, and the absolute change to road requirements would affect the ability of some people to rebuild their houses when things have been damaged, would also affect even some infill sites in places such as McKinleyville and other areas where there are existing fire districts, but they are within the state responsibility area. And so there just needs to be a little bit more of a nuanced understanding of how to address these issues. We all agree that changes are needed. We all agree that there needs to be particular consideration given to the importance of development within wildland fire areas of high fire danger. The concern is when you take and use a one-size-fits-all approach and you start to make it impossible for people to rebuild, you make it impossible for inland or infill lots to develop. Those are unintended consequences of the rulemaking that we would like the Board of Forestry to be careful with.
Okay. Was that helpful? Supervisor Wilson, I believe, was the one.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, certainly there's a spectrum there of issues. I mean, with relationship to infill and areas that have fire districts versus, you know, the ability, whatever that means, really the entitlement to rebuild, while not necessarily meeting certain standards that exist today that may not have existed in the past. I just, you know, the nuance of that will really, I think, will really hit with insurance, I think, is really where that's gonna play out. Whether or not we as a permitting agents jurisdiction allow something, and whether or not a private or even state insurance program allows for that to actually be insured, I think we should probably separate. It would be good to separate those two things in my mind, but that's a nuance that I don't think is going to separate me from supporting this this letter. It's just something we need to be aware of.
Yana?
Good morning, supervisors, staff. Yana Valikovic from Cooperative Extension. I've been working with Director Ford's team and John Miller, as well as the County of Del Norte and their planning departments, to track this process and provide guidance and input along with it. And I think one of the ways to put perspective on this is that I think we all agree that when you have the opportunity for new development, new subdivision in the biggest, grandest sense, that we really need to be thoughtful, and we really need to make sure that we've got ingress and egress, and we've got roads that are appropriate, and we've got services and all those things. These rules, these draft rules address that, but they also catch all development up in the same lens. And so what's interesting about this process is watching the California Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. They recognize that their current version has many flaws in it and has many things that make a lot of counties very uncomfortable. Over 30 counties called into the March 23rd meeting and said, you know, we're just not quite there with you. We get the spirit of what you're trying to do, but the terms, the language, the analysis, we either don't have that capacity, we can't understand, impact. Can we make sure we just get on the same page before you put this out for a formal review? And the board said, yeah, we get it. We're just going to put it out anyway. And we're going to enter this formal administrative law review process because we think that that's prudent to do. So they recognize they've got a work in progress. It's not fully developed. And now they've waited 6 more weeks to officially put the official draft out. So we're kind of watching a process that's evolving very quickly and then goes to these stops and starts where it's unclear. So it's really about language and definitions and making sure that what we get left with is something that, our communities can work with and fit and are appropriate and don't cause additional impact to natural resources, where we have limitations. For example, road expansion has problems. There are lots of other issues that are caught up in this. And so, our housing element has certain pieces. I think we're all in the right spirit of this. The devil's in the details at this point. So having this letter basically puts the County of Humboldt officially in giving comment. Any effort done before this does not count in the record. So it mandates that they will take Humboldt County's viewpoints seriously, and therefore you'll be a part of the conversation.
All right, thank you, Yana. Any other supervisors at the moment? All right. Seeing none, is there anyone in the public who'd like to comment on this item? If you're listening, press star 9. And do not think we have, we do have one. one hand up, and 0151. Welcome, Dottie. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to say the comment about resources is also dear to my heart. It has been said in the past, if there aren't resources, then there shouldn't be programs. I think that's a very inexcusable approach, and instead that if there aren't resources should be implemented. They should be included in the plan and not excluding the plan altogether. So we have a responsibility to make sure that resources are where the people are as well, and that we shouldn't try to, kind of gather them and send them to certain areas like cattle, because people aren't cattle. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dottie. And I see no one else that has their hand up. We'll go back to the board. Any more comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion for staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Supervisor Bushnell. Seeing no hands up from the board, we'll go to roll call vote. Ryan?
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bohn?
Yes.
Thank you. It passes 5-0.
All right. I'd like to ask our County Council Billingsley a question now that we're moving on. So we have one close, I'm trying to decide, do we want to stick the closed session in prior to the 11 o'clock? What is your time estimate that you believe that item will take?
Chair, I don't believe that would take more than 15 minutes.
That's 15 minutes. Yeah, I actually, if that takes 15 minutes, we're going to be getting up pretty close to the 11 o'clock item, I think. And
perfect.
I would just, well, actually, I would suggest the majority of the board, I'd say we take the 20 minutes and come back at 11 and then deal with the closed session after we our next opening. It doesn't matter to me. Anyone else?
Sounds like it.
I know Supervisor Bohn wants to go for it all the way, just press pedal to the metal. Anyone else? Supervisor Wilson? Time's up.
We have one closed session, right? That's we're estimating to be 15 minutes. And then what happens? And then 11, we have the time set.
Right.
And then do we have anything? I don't think we have anything more on our agenda, correct?
There's a chair, there's a 1:30 time set.
There's a 1:30 time set?
I'd Director Ford, as we're trying. I just think we never get out of things within the 15-minute period that Jefferson expects it. Supervisor Wilson, and then Supervisor Ford. Director Ford.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the 1:30 item is really informational. That appeal has been withdrawn. So there is no action for the board. We put that on the agenda strictly to inform people. You don't need to come back at 1:30 for that item because there's nothing there to act on.
Yeah, my concern is I think our 11 o'clock is going to be a long item.
Oh.
And I don't know if it's going to be done before. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of information. So I would just suggest we're going to do the closed session after the 11 o'clock item. That's my decision. So there you go. We will come back here at 11 o'clock. Our time set item comes to us by the County Administrative Office, and it's regarding adoption of the pension funding policy. So take it away.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Today we have the adoption of the pension funding policy and a couple of presentations for you. And Sean Quincy, our Deputy County Administrative Officer, has been working on this project. And so I'll turn this over to Sean for a staff report.
All right, thank you, Amy, and thank you, Chair Bass, members of the board. Over the last 20 years, the county's annual contributions towards pension costs have grown exponentially, And without a comprehensive strategy going forward, these costs will threaten the county's ability to provide many local services. Over the next decade alone, required contributions are projected to grow by roughly $17 million per year if no deliberate action is taken to curb those costs. Very quickly, over the last 10 years, the board has taken action to address pension costs. In 2012, the board changed benefit packages offered to employees even before PEPR took effect. And in 2015, the board established a Section 115 trust, which is an external account authorized by the IRS that must be used for pension costs. And local governments can contribute towards this trust with general fund dollars, as well as charging state and federal funding sources. And we can use those funds to invest more aggressively than we can invest funds in the county treasury. Charges for the Section 115 trust ceased in fiscal year 2019 due to a need for an updated actuarial valuation that included the 115 trust. And finally, and I know that our presenters will talk more in depth on this issue, the county can take similar action to address other post-employment benefit costs, or OPEB costs, which are also growing and in the long term will put significant pressure on county resources. So the pension funding policy before your board today, along with the actuarial done by Bartel Associates, which includes the 115 trust, aims to allow the county to use sustainable methods to fund the county's more than $331 million unfunded liability while maximizing state and federal resources in order to preserve and protect local programs. And with that, I have Dan Matuszewicz from GovInvest, Randy Yurchak, Mitch Barker, and Angela Tang, all from PARS, to discuss the Section 115 trust. And Dan, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to provide an overview of pension costs and the pension policy.
And Dan, can you blow it up maybe a little bit more? I know there's a couple of us that sometimes needed a little larger print, mostly me. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, you might be on mute.
There we go. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that for the false start. Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for letting me address you today. My name is Dan Matuszewicz. I'm a senior consultant for GovInvest. We're a technology firm that helps agencies, provide some analytical, both financial and actuarial firepower behind making some of their decisions. And today we're going to talk about a policy, but before we head into strategy and tactics, I always find it helpful to talk a little bit about some of the basics, some of the headwinds that we're facing, how the county is doing relative to its targets, and then we can get into tactical strategies after that. And we'll tag team a little bit with PARS, the 115 trust provider. And so as we get into basic pension basics, you can see really there's two sets of both the economic and demographic assumptions associated with the plan really set the cost and the funding expectations. But of all of these assumptions, really the assumption that drives the cost the most is the investment income assumption, as we'll see in subsequent slides. So while this is an illustration of mortality risk, it's a good opportunity to review some of the actuarial jargon, the present value of projected benefits. If we were looking at a plan in through the lens of an individual employee, the projected value of present value of projected benefits is really the savings goal as this individual approaches retirement. And the idea is to set money aside or pre-fund setting money aside during their active service life of the employee, so that by the time that person reaches the retirement age, there will be sufficient funds set aside in trust to grow for a bit and then draw down during the retirement life. Now, should the employee live past their expected expiration date, then you have some mortality risk, and under a defined benefit program, the county bears the risk of any of those assumptions not being met. But to draw contrast between two of your plans, your pension plan, you are indeed pre-funding the plan during the active service life of your employee. In contrast, your OPEB plan is not being pre-funded during the active service life of the employee, but essentially you're almost waiting till retirement and really losing that benefit of compounding investment earnings. And during the active service life, then these, what they call pay-go costs can be extraordinarily large if you wait until the person is in retirement. So that is one thing that the county should really consider switching their methodology on their OPEB plan. With pension, you really don't have a choice. That is set by state statute that you must make your required pension contributions. That is not true. You're not required by law to set money aside during the active service life for your OPEB plan, because that is self-administered, but something you should consider. So getting back to the pension side, I mentioned the other driver of one of the drivers is the market value of assets, and to the extent that CalPERS does not earn their expected rate of return, you can see there is a shortfall that's developing due to underperforming investments. But this black line represents the employee and employer contributions, and in a typical retirement plan, the investment earnings would make up roughly 2/3 of the overall balance. So that's why the investment earnings represent such a significant assumption in your plan funding. But if we were to take a look again at some of this terminology, the savings goal is not your accrued liability. Your accrued liability would be at a picture point in time. This is the savings goal, but let's say at age 45, the individual should have funds set aside at that blue level. And when the investment earnings are below that level, the red would represent your unfunded accrued pension liability. So hopefully that makes things a little clearer. Now, how did we get here? This is a CalPERS slide, and it does show some of the events that transpired. And it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, look back and say, well, gosh, it wasn't very smart to provide these pension enhancements that were given out in the late 90s, early 2000s. But the world was really in a different place than it is today. So keep in mind the .coms companies were doing that very well. The housing market seemed like it saw no limits, and so the pension fund was overfunded, and it seemed, at least the story was, that you could provide additional benefits at no future cost, because historically CalPERS, both on the fixed income and in their equities, were earning substantially above the expected discount rate. Well, unfortunately, the good times did not continue, and we had the .com crash, we had the Great Recession, and then subsequent reductions in the discount rate. And just to date myself, When I started, the discount rate was actually at 8.75%, and now we've seen it drift all the way down to 7%. And it is this is my personal believing, not GovInvest saying, I do believe there will be further discount rate changes coming down the road that the county should be prepared for. So I always tell my counterparts in the local government to challenge yourself to look beyond what you see today. And so we're in a market right now that is being bolstered by a lot of federal stimulus. And the question is, what will things look like when the stimulus ends? And we have quite a bit of inflation that maybe as a result of the deficit that's growing, there could be inflation in the short term. So I'll stop there for a sec to see if you have any further questions, or would you prefer, Sean, that I just keep mowing through the presentation at this point?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and just keep on going unless the board has anything else to discuss right now.
Okay. So I'd like to talk about a little bit about the hurdles or headwinds that CalPERS is facing. Agencies are still paying off the losses that were incurred during the Great Recession. On top of that, the last couple of years, they've not met their assumed rate of return. In 2019, they were 0.3% off, which cost your county about $3.8 million. And in the 2020 val that you'll be receiving this August, there'll be another underperformance of about 7%. I'm sorry, of 2.3%, which would cost your county about $16.5 million on top of its current unfunded liability. But more alarming is the capital market assumptions looking forward. So when both CalPERS and their investment advisor, Wilshire and Associates, look forward at the asset classes that they're invested in the short to intermediate term, their 10-year projection is on average, they will earn 4.85%. And then even over the long term, this might be as low as 6.42%, well below the current discount rate of 7%. And earlier this year, I thought this was a leading indicator. However, that discount rates would change. Now I think it's a foregone conclusion. It's a matter of how far will the board likely reduce the discount rate. And so the board will be faced with a decision in November is when they will look at reducing their discount rate. And when I talked about those average returns, you can see that in all the years of CalPERS investment returns, they've never exactly landed on the assumed rate of return. It's always above and below the line. So when we talk about average rates of returns or linear returns, it's the average that should kind of approximate what the discount rate is. And as I mentioned on that previous slide, the long term has slipped to about 6.42%. So why is that? Well, there are a lot of economic factors, including a slowdown in global growth, a population growth. That's one of the primary engines that drives the GDP. Of course, if there are more people, there's more spending and more production that needs. We've got two things happening. One, population growth is slowing, and two, we have an aging population moving into retirement. But CalPERS has a 60-40 portfolio, what I would like to say. So 60% is either in public equities or in private equities, and the balance of the portfolio is made up of fixed income and real estate. Both are sensitive to interest rates. And when 28% of your portfolio is in fixed income And we saw over this last year what the, last couple decades really, is that the fixed income rates have continued to descend. At the lowest point, the 10-year was probably 50 basis points. I think it closed closer to 1.7 or 1.8 yesterday. But still, when you have 30% of your portfolio earning a very low yield, is there a path to 7%? So CalPERS admits that in order, if you want us to try to hit 7%, they're going to need to take more risk. So that will be the discussion of the year, which will be take on more risk, or it'll be a balance between keeping the plan funded and not reducing discount rates so far that would put further stress on local entities in reducing that discount rate. And we'll take a look at the impact, how sensitive your plan is to changes in the discount rate. But for those reasons, that's where Wilshire and Associates changed their discount rate assumption, and not the discount rate assumption. This is their capital market assumption. CalPERS is doing their own study. It's called their asset liability management timeline, and you'll notice that they've started to educate the board on, hey, what the impacts will be if they don't raise the rate and they just simply achieve lower returns. What if they lower the discount rate? What impact would that have on contributions? But this is a good opportunity for the board and the staff to, what I like to say, stay tuned, stay informed, stay engaged, because CalPERS does listen. So if it was all based on financial drivers, I'm sure they would love to reduce the expected rate of return as far as down to 6%. However, politics, labor, and reality of is that affordable will intervene. So there will be some concession on both sides, I think, to land on a portfolio that both meets the needs of the stakeholders, i.e. participants in the program, as well as the employers that would, that face the funding challenge if it is reduced. So in September, the staff will introduce candidate portfolios, investment portfolios, along with, the expected earnings rate and volatility. And the key is November. Expect that November there'll be a very important decision by the board, but they will also be holding a number of stakeholder forums. And so next week, April 27th, you can tune in. CalPERS does have a YouTube channel, and you can either watch live streaming from the board or afterwards on YouTube to see how those discussions are going. And they usually tip their hands during these meetings. So great opportunity for the county to get involved and voice any opinions that you may have about what that right balance is. Okay, so now we get into the county of Humboldt, and just looking at it by some of the counties that I understand the county of Humboldt likes to compare itself to. You're kind of in the middle of the pack for the plans that I would say, are more what you would see across a larger spectrum. I suspect Tulare and Sonoma was either extremely aggressive or potentially maybe have even issued pension obligation bonds in order to get this high a level of a funded ratio. But that is more the exception, and Humboldt is kind of right where I would expect most agencies to be. And overall, you could see that the plan in total is about 70.8% funded. Happens to be exactly where Butte County is, but that's where the system as a whole is funded. Your unfunded liability in your latest val shows about $329 million unfunded accrued liability, bringing you at a funded status of 65.8%. And that grows for a few years, but then because you're paying off so much principal in the near term on those 2008 Great Recession losses, that you will actually start bringing that unfunded liability downward. And that's the nice thing about the new amortization policies, in that they are self-correcting. So as you incur losses, they act as a means to get the plan back into full funded status, within a 20-year period. Now, so just stress testing your plan a bit, you can see the point I was making about how much principal that you are paying off. So under different investment return scenarios, you can see your plan funded status doesn't drop all that much, even all the way down at the 5% level. It stays, it's below the target, so you're not making progress, but your funded status isn't dropping, at least now for what you see in this picture, because during this term you're paying off a lot of principal. But what you would see in the out years, that inflection rate point of inflection, we would see the funded status start creeping, actually start losing ground and turning the other way. So your normal cost, which is the service cost for the period, this is what I was referring to as the pre-funding. So you're pre-funding as you go along, and it's made up of both employee and employer contributions. What the employer is expected to pay is their portion of the normal cost plus the unfunded liability. And the unfunded liability is where all the volatility is. And so taking a slight closer look, just isolating the payments on the unfunded liability, you do for the next couple years, both in the current budget year, you're looking at a 9% increase over the prior. I believe another like 6 or 7%, and then it levels off. I think a 4% return, and then leveling off around 24, 25, and then we start to see the plan, if all future assumptions are being met, including the investment earnings rate, then we see the plan getting paid off over time. But let's take the extreme example. If there was a sudden decrease into the discount rate, it would create a substantial burden on the county. Now, it's not likely that they would, CalPERS would drop the discount rate to 6% in one fell swoop, but they'll shift it in over time. But I like to look at these extremes to identify how much 20 years is a long time. How would I meet that $17 million moving forward, and trying to carve that out into your out of your revenue stream, essentially build room for it in your budget. So this 20-year period is when you're paying off the unfunded liability that's associated with dropping the discount rate, and that is essentially all past service that creates that unfunded liability, and then future service. Once that unfunded liability is paid off associated with the discount rate, then you would expect your contributions at that 6% rate would change your normal cost or your service cost for the period around $6 million thereafter. So some of the strategies that the county has deployed, one is an internal service charge. This is something I used a lot as a finance director treasurer at City of Newport Beach for a long time. Is make heavy use of internal service funds, where you charge the departments and your enterprise funds an amount for a centrally managed cost or program. And that way, when you charge these departments, when you're charging them, you're ensuring that in their cost structure and the fee structure for these programs, that those costs are showing up, and you're able to recover them in your fees by actually charging them an amount to set funds aside to manage your pensions. And so that these are internal funds, and then the city has the choice or the option to send the money into their 115 pre-funding trust or contribute directly to PERS. And both these are essentially external. Well, CalPERS for sure. The 115 trust is set aside in trust specifically for pension or OPEB, depending on the type of 115 plan that you set up. And so those charges that are set between 1/4 to 2% would, this is, I guess, the range by looking at your projected payroll, the range of contributions that you might be setting aside annually as part of your new policy, which would, set that rate between 1/4 and 2%. And then there's also a minimum balance associated with the policy, which includes a minimum balance target that was described in the policy, which is 1/6 of your total employer contribution to CalPERS. So I projected that out to 2027 based on meeting current actuarial assumptions. And this gives you an idea of what your minimum balances would be in your Section 115 trust. And with that, I will entertain, that's the end of my presentation, and entertain any questions the board may have.
All right, thank you, Dan. If you would like to stop sharing your screen, we can see if there's any hands up from our crowd here. Any of the soups have a question at this point?
So,
Rex?
Yes, Dan, we just went through this at air quality the other day, and I guess for our position, it's a pretty daunting amount when you see it, and if everybody retires tomorrow, we're in trouble. But I think for the public and everything else, we're not in great shape, but we're not in bad shape. Would that be a good way to cliff note it?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely on the payroll side. I know you have a. I'm sorry, on the pension side, you are pre-funding, although they have some headwinds, that you should pay attention to, being the lower capital market assumptions. But I would, encourage you to take a look at pre-funding your OPEB plan as well, because that is one of those things that can get away from you if you're not paying attention. And so down the road, those paying on a pay-go basis could outpace your ability to make those contributions rather than pre-funding and letting during the active service life of your employee, having those funds accumulate to an amount that would pay those OPEB benefits as well.
So through the chair, basically our money would work better for us, kind of like the private citizen had their money work for them during this pandemic, I guess, or better returns.
Sure, you want to save during your active service life, and rather than waiting till to retirement to say, how am I going to pay my mortgage or whatever my situation is? So start early and make those contributions, and then it'll make it less painful to pay those benefits when those that have that vested benefit go into retirement. And in my view, and I think others share this view, is either pre-fund or curb your OPEB benefits. It's like really the two ways you ought to look at that.
Great, thank you.
Sean?
Chair Bass and Supervisor, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. Mitch Barker and his team at PARS also have a presentation to talk about our Section 115 trust too and how it's been performing.
Okay. Well, given that, why don't we have them do their presentation and then we can ask questions of everybody, I guess, if that works. Mitch, welcome. Except you unmute yourself. Are you unmuted?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, everyone. Glad to be here. We look forward to this visit each year. Hopefully, in the near future, it'll be in person. Next slide. Joining me today is Angela Tang. She's our client service coordinator for your agency, and also Randy Yurchak. He's the portfolio manager from Highmark Capital. Next. For anybody that doesn't remember or perhaps hasn't been a part of our review presentations, just a quick overview. 3 companies work together to bring you this 115 trust program. PARS, we're known as trust administrators. We do the record keeping, the accounting. The reason that's needed is it's one trust, multiple employer trusts that multiple agencies join. So we have over 400 agencies in the same trust, and we've got to keep everybody separate, their assets, their earnings, their liabilities, and so forth. We also monitor money coming in, and we process disbursements when you ask for a disbursement. And we're also all about compliance. We've got to follow the IRS rules, GASB rules, and state government code. So it's our job to do all of those things. Working very closely with us is our trustee, U.S. Bank. They're the custodian of the assets. They hold the money. And then Highmark Capital, as mentioned, is our investment management partner. And we've been working with them for 20 years, and they do a great job of listening to the input of the county and figuring out what's the risk tolerance level that's appropriate, and then managing the money to the best of their ability. Next. Just a reminder, this is IRS-approved trust. It's the only kind of trust that we offer to our agencies. We want to make sure the IRS has blessed it as a tax-exempt vehicle. That's important. Some folks will say, well, we're already a tax-exempt agency. Well, that's true, but the assets of this trust are outside the county treasury. So it's important that the IRS have blessed this as a tax-exempt vehicle. And what's key and what's unique about our trust is it's a combination trust. You have the ability to pre-fund either OPEB or pension or both. So you've got both of the post-employment benefits. Right now, you're pre-funding the pension side, and you have not pre-funded the OPEB as Dan has mentioned. And we want to further encourage you to look at the OPEB side as well. Next. We like to share who else has adopted our program, especially in county land, 30 counties, so 29 besides yours. So we're very appreciative of your business, and you've been with us for quite some time. In fact, the first county to adopt our 115 trust to pre-fund way back in the day was in 2006 was Trinity County. So not too far from you. So we're very partial to the North State area. In fact, I've moved to Amador County, so from Orange County, so I'm getting closer. I'm going to leave Dan to Orange County, but I'm heading north here. I like what's happening in the North State. Next. All right, so let's talk about OPEB again real quick. It's set up, it's ready to go. It's just a matter of establishing a funding policy and putting money in the future. So the strategy chosen back when is the moderately conservative. That's the second one from the bottom. It's about a 30% equity, 70% bond portfolio. That can be changed at any point in time. So eventually when you do put money in, we'll revisit this and make sure that risk tolerance level is the most appropriate one for the county. And the plan administrator is the county administrative officer. Next. Well, so real key when we're talking about OPEB is the actuarial evaluation by Dan's team, Precision Actuarial. This was from June 30, 2018. And the GASB rules are that it has to be updated every 2 years, regardless of size. Next. All right, here are the key numbers. So the discount rate in the study right now on a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning you're not pre-funding, you're simply paying your annual benefit payments at the bottom there of 2.1 million. Your unfunded liability is 43 million. That's a large number, and we want to help you do something about that. And there's 3 ways to impact this thing significantly. The first is to put money in the trust, and by doing that, you will earn a greater discount rate. Now, what I've done is add 3 percentage points to that pay-go rate. So 3 plus 3.62 equals 6.62. We don't know what the discount rate will be when you start pre-funding it, but we wanted to make the math simple today for our discussion. And here's the deal. If you put money aside and we target 6.62 with a investment strategy, there is a 30 to 36% lowering of that unfunded liability just by pre-funding and by getting a higher discount rate. That's enormous. That's significant. So 30% of 43 million is about 12 million off the top. I can't understate or overstate how important that is to get started at some point. The rule of thumb, if you forget all of this, is for every 1% increase in the discount rate, your unfunded liability is lowered by 10 to 12. So the second way you lower your liabilities is to put money on line 2. One of the beauties of OPEB, as established by GASB, every dollar you put in the trust for OPEB lowers a liability dollar on the balance sheet. So you get this tremendous offset on your balance sheet. And with GASB 75, the liabilities went from a footnote, kind of buried, nobody was looking at them. Now they're a line item on the balance sheet. It's a big deal. It makes a difference. When agencies borrow money, rating agencies look at the balance sheet, of course, and they see the liabilities. And they are very supportive of pre-funding OPEB. In fact, GASB even put out a circular a few years back that said, this is considered best practice, pre-funding OPEB. And I've never heard a Board of Supervisors group or city council say, no, we don't do things considered best practice. Of course you do. It's just a matter of establishing your priorities and eventually getting going. So I, along with Dan, really want to encourage you to take the next step at some point to talk seriously about pre-funding OPEB and lowering those liabilities and improving your balance sheet. Next. All right, let's talk about your specific pension plan within our 115 Trust, established September 2015. So it's been going along for a little over 5 years. Plan administrator is the CAO. Current investment strategy is moderately conservative. That's similar to the OPEB. So that's the second one from the bottom. It's about a 30-70 strategy. And it's an active platform. Active means using mutual funds that have the chance to outperform their benchmark. And active has been doing quite well versus passive lately. It is an individual account, which means that gives Randy and his team the opportunity to perhaps customize your strategy depending on what's happening in the market and the opportunities they see. So let's get specific. And this is as of March 31st. So very recent information. Your initial contribution was $187,000 back in the day. You've contributed an additional 5.2. So your contributions to date are 5.4 million. You've not taken any money out, so you've held the line, which is good. You're keeping this money aside for future use when things really get tough. And the investment earnings to date, 1.385 million. So total assets as of March 31st, 6.7 million. It's done very nicely. We always like to show a graphical representation over time so you can kind of see how the money came in over the years. 2019 year, fiscal year, you put in a lot of money, 3.4 million. So you really boosted the contributions there, which was very much of a positive. So again, balance to date, 6.7 million. All right, why did you do it? It's right in front of you, right here. CalPERS puts out an actuarial update every year, comes out in August, as you know, and it always runs 1 year behind. So the current numbers are in the middle there. Valuation as of June 30, 2019. Third line down, your unfunded liability, $331 million. Your funded ratio, as Dan mentioned, 68.5. We see a range of 60 to 80% of our public agencies. So you're very close to that center point. And Dan, in fact, Tulare County did do a joint strategy about 4 years ago, adjunct, two-pronged, and it was both a POB offering and a formation of a 115 trust. So that, in fact, is why their funded ratio is so high with CalPERS. So here are the two key numbers. Your contribution amount this year is $39.3 million. What will it be in 6 fiscal years as projected by CalPERS? 44.2. That's a $5 million increase in 6 fiscal years. That's a lot of money. And the idea is to be ready for that increase, because if the budget is in a tough position, you have funds to go to help stopgap and back you up. So those are the numbers from CalPERS. And as Dan indicated, they'll come out again this next year in August, and they'll bring in the performances from last year. Next. All right, that's the last slide I have. I'll turn it over to Randy Yurchak with Highmark Capital, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, I was gonna say we might hold off all questions till the end since we've got
Very
another
good.
presentation, if that's okay.
Sounds good, of course. Randy, you're on.
Okay, thank you, Mitch.
And I have to ask you, I didn't ask Mitch to make it a little bigger, but my eyes were having a heck of a time seeing this number. So if you could find a way just to increase that a little bit. Either that or I'm standing way back at the back of my wall. Okay, thank you,
Angela.
Okay, as Mitch mentioned, the investment allocation is our moderately conservative and it's an active portfolio. So we have 2 different flavors of our 5 different investment objectives, passive and active. Passive uses passively managed funds to reflect the benchmark. And so our active uses actively managed mutual funds seeking to outperform the benchmark. So as we go through the numbers, you'll see variances, and that's due to the active fund influence. So on another level, what we do is we can tweak the investment allocation based on our outlook, as Mitch had mentioned. So currently a mix of investments is 31% stocks. The midpoint or long-term strategic target is 30%, so overweight. We're also overweight bonds, though. It's at 60, almost 68%, and the reason being is because cash is at effectively 0% yield. So over longer periods of time, we expect bonds to outperform as well cash. And just to note, cash is expected to yield 0% for about until 2023, as the Fed has indicated. So the returns look actually quite good on the 1-year number. That's only because we're anniversarying a low point in the market. But since inception here, it's 6.7%, strong returns from that perspective as well. We actually expect for our moderately conservative investment objective over a 30-year time horizon, 5.1%. And that actually has come down to about 5.5%. Our expectations last year, and the variance there, the difference in return expectation is because of the lower returns on bonds, as well as the relatively higher valuations on the stocks. And Dan made a very important point and highlighted those changes on the Wilshire side, Wilshire assumptions on the long-term return assumptions. So we our numbers reflect that market dynamic as well. So if we go ahead and flip to the next slide. So as these are the returns for the plan broken out by sub-asset class and asset class. Cash and equivalents, as I mentioned, 0% until 2023, at least at this point. The expectation is, given that we're low in terms of cash, but in terms of the fixed income, though, we did beat the benchmark there for the 3-month period, the first quarter here, minus down 2.6 versus the benchmark down 3.3. But yes, it was down, and the reason for that, of course, is because the higher yields on longer-term bonds, and the yields declined because of mainly because of higher growth expectations. So the economy starting to take off is the expectation. Of course, they hasn't happened yet, but with, of course, the increase in vaccinations, expect that to happen. But also inflationary expectations have picked up a little bit. And then stocks was the big winner for the quarter, up 7%. The large caps category outperformed. Mid caps in line. Small caps underperformed a little. Gave back some of the strong returns over the last year. As you can see, up 96% versus 98% versus 90, almost 95 for the benchmark. And international is a blend of emerging and developed markets, also up for the for the quarter, but trailed the domestic markets. REITs actually had a good quarter as well. They were hit hard because, of course, we had closures on lots of parts of the economy and uncertainty with regards to all that. Now, if you look at the return for the 3-month period, now because of the higher allocation to fixed income, almost 70% of the portfolio, that was the main influence in terms of returns. But because stocks did so well, we were able to eke out a positive return for the quarter. And on the next slide, these we're all about full disclosure for the plan. These are all the funds that we own, that are owned in the plan, as well as how much we own of them. So these are the areas we can tweak as we see as our outlook changes based on market conditions and how things evolve. So as I mentioned, we're currently overweight both stocks and bonds. We actually are a little overweight the shorter term side of bonds, which are less sensitive to interest rates. And on the next slide is the returns of each of these different funds in the portfolio on a trailing time period basis. Basically, this is the starting point when we review our managers to see if they are actually doing the job we hired them to do, is to outperform their benchmark. This is our lineup. And then the next slide shows the last of our managers on bonds, on the bond side. And then just to wrap up our outlook going forward, we do think that the stocks, will continue to kind of lead the way, but not without volatility. A few factors on there is the ever-present geopolitical risks, but of course how the opening up of the economy will translate into inflationary expectations. And we are a little bit heavier debt and leveraged society. Higher interest rates will impact borrowing rates, which it may cause some additional volatility in the markets. But we do think that the vaccine rollout will eventually lead to a broader opening up of our economy domestically here. Any questions?
Doesn't appear to be at the moment. I think CIO Nilsson, I just wanted to see if there's anything else you wanted to add on top of this. I understand we're supposed to talk about changes we might like to see in the policies and a few other things, but I wanted to hear how you think this conversation should progress, if you have any suggestions.
Sean will be able to handle that question.
Oh, sorry about that. Sean?
No, that's all right.
I didn't see it. My page only shows, it doesn't show your picture, so.
No, there's a lot of people on the meeting today. So the decision points before your board right now are, number one, to adopt the pension funding policy. I will note that, as Mitch was talking about, currently the CAO is the plan administrator for the Section 115 trust. The pension funding policy proposes to have the CAO and the treasurer tax collector be the plan administrator. And so we would work with Mr. Bartholomew and work with Mitch and Randy and his team to go through all the bevy of numbers that we just looked over as far as investment strategy for the 115 trust. The other decision point for your board regarding the 115 trust is to look at more of a short-term strategy for the 115 trust or a long-term strategy. In the actuarial valuation that Bartel Associates provided, that's in your guys' packet, it provides two scenarios, a short-term strategy and a long-term strategy. The long-term strategy provides greater savings to the county to the county budget, and the short-term strategy obviously provides more immediate relief, but would be losing on savings in the long term. So those are the kind of two decision points for your board in regards to the pension funding policy today.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, are any of the supervisors have questions for any of the presenters? Or we can launch into conversation, whichever looks best. I'm not seeing any questions yet. Supervisor Bohn?
Well, I think we've been in this now, was that 2015? And I think the results are somewhat obvious. We're doing fairly well on with our PARs and with our partnerships here. And I know we've had a couple questions about this, and I think it's proven that we're hedging our bets, as one would say, and the investment strategy is a fluid situation, and I like the idea of taking advantage of it when we can and scaling back when we can. I think that's what this allows us, is from what I can see and from the investment, the funds that we are invested in, except Vanguard's is terrible. But anyway, that's a different story. But anyway, so I appreciate it.
All right. Anyone else at this from the board?
Yeah, I'll jump in here for a second. It's all gambling to a certain degree, and we all understand that, and then predictions of these market spaces, and averaging these losses and gains. And I think that the performance has been, it's been good enough for us to continue with this. I mean, I understand, like, we are entering, I think, again, I'm only guessing, like you, a volatile space. While vaccines are up in the United States, we're having vaccine issues or lack of vaccine issues in big parts of the rest of the planet. And that can cause some volatility for sure. And I think there's some nervousness about that. And then, of course, all of the money that, as the government, we're borrowing in this moment, and how we're going to adjust for that. I mean, I think November we will be having to make some decisions, only because, and thoughtful analysis at that time, because we will be in a probably pretty different space. Although unpredictable, it does seem like there will be challenges in that time that we're running, that we're moving towards, and I suppose opportunities as well. But I don't know. I'm always the nervous Nelly when it comes to investing these things. It just seems like magic to me. Not really, but you understand what I mean.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Wilson. Anyone else at this time from the board? Okay, well, I'm gonna go and see if there's any public comment. We hate to tell you, there's not a whole lot of people tuning into us for this one. They must not think pension conversations are like exciting or something. All right, well, we'll go back to pensions. So we'll go back to the board then. I mean, from my perspective, I like the idea of the long-term strategy, but that's just, I don't do any investing either in my personal world. So to me, that always just seems to be, it looks like it's better. What are the drawbacks to taking that approach? Amy or anyone?
Mitch, do you think you would be able to talk about the short-term strategy versus long-term strategy in the Bartell evaluation?
Well, I'm not an investment guy. We're trust administrators. I think Dan's more qualified, in my opinion, especially having been a CFO of the county, or sorry, of the city of Newport Beach. So, Dan, if you're okay with it, I think you're the better person to comment on long-term versus short-term.
So long-term strategies typically you're going to want to match your cash flows and with your investment horizon. So if the intent of the fund is to have a long investment strategy, the annual volatility will abate the longer the investment horizon is. The shorter horizon of, if you have funds in there that are going to be, you might need to tap in the near term, 3 to 5 years, then there's going to be more volatility with the mix in equities. For OPEB, certainly that has a long-term tail to it. So I think a long-term investment aggressive strategy would be appropriate. And it just depends on how you plan on using your pension pre-funding trust. Is it, a short-term vehicle, or is that balance going to, does that minimum balance imply that balance will be out there for a long period of time and that you would just use the excess? And that might be a way to look at it, is the long-term component has a more aggressive strategy, and anything that you might need in the near term would be invested more conservatively, just as you approach retirement, right? So nearer that you get to drawing on those funds, the more conservative strategy that you might want to be. And Randy probably could add a whole lot more additional color towards the efficient frontiers and how that risk abates over time.
And I'll just say through the chair, just in terms of cold dollars, the projected savings in pension funding contributions under the short-term strategy would be $6.6 million by 2032, 33. If we go with the long-term strategy, the projected savings in pension funding contributions would be $24 million by 2038. So there's a big difference in terms of the savings that we would generate with a long-term versus short-term.
Okay, so one of our decision points is whether we want to pursue the short or the long-term strategy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I look at it from the long-term perspective. I'm curious what the other supervisors are thinking, so at least we kind of have some direction, at least on some of this. Yes, Supervisor Madrone?
I'm long-term.
Wilson, Supervisor Wilson, shaking your head. Rex?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can echo that sentiment for sure, especially not knowing what the short term really is going to bring.
Okay, and Supervisor Bushnell, I wanted to give you an opportunity. Do you have a thought either way on this? I know this is your first one of these you've got to sit in on experience.
I don't right now. I'm just listening to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay. So we have kind of feels like a consensus on the long term. So one of the other things is there's the changes to consider about establishing a salary percentage deduction to be placed in the internal pension management account. Anyway, it's on your agenda. So I'm not sure. Sean, do you have any suggestions on that, how we should approach that conversation? I mean, this is not my bailiwick. I'm not a financial expert. Believe me.
So through the chair, that's a component of the pension funding policy. So all your board really needs to do is adopt the pension funding policy, and then through the budget process, we will come back with an annual allocation, percentage of salary, one-time contribution to the PARS Trust.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. So basically, we say yes to the pension policy and the long-term. I mean, so that's that's what you're asking here, right? There's a lot of ground. So I just want to make sure I'm asking for the idea of what the right message you want in the motion. Amy, CIO Nilsson.
Thank you, Chair Bass. So a possible motion could be to adopt the pension funding policy and to pursue a long-term funding strategy to the Section 115 trust.
Okay, yes, and thank you. That was in the board report, and it's underlined for anyone who wants to see it in actual writing. So that is staff's recommendation. And is there a member of the board who'd like to make a motion to accept that recommendation?
I'll do staff's recommendation. It's a marathon, not a race.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, a second. Is there further conversation on this before we actually vote for this? No? All right, Ryan, can you please have a roll call vote?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Affirmative.
Supervisor Bohn?
Thank you.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right. Well, thank all of you for being on the call, on the Zoom with us, and a lot of information. So you can now go and enjoy your day, unless you want to stick around for our closed session, which you can't. So we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. All right. So we will move on to our closed session item, and I'd like to ask our County Council Billingsley to brief us on that.
Thank you, Chair. It's the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D1 to discuss existing litigation in the case of North Coast Environmental Center et al. Versus County of Humboldt, Humboldt Superior Case Number CV 2100518.
All right, thank you. And we have no one interested in making public comment on this time. So we will adjourn to closed session, and then after that, take our break until the 1:30 time set, which is when we'll be back on air. All right. Yeah. Come back. County Council Billingsley, can we have a report out of closed session?
Yes, Chair. On item M1, the board voted 4-1 with Supervisor Madrone voting no to authorize the risk manager to enter into an agreement with Remy, Moose, and Manley for defense of the action.
All right, thank you. So with that, we'll move on to our 1:30 time set, which is regarding an appeal. And I'll say up front, the appeal has been withdrawn by the applicant, and because we did continue the public hearing, we still will have public comment today. And but we're not going to take we're not going to take any action on the appeal. I'm not used to having someone looking over my shoulder. All right, so John.
Thank you, Chair Bass. I think you said it well. The appeal on this has been withdrawn. So there has been an agreement between the appellant and the applicant, which is a great thing. So there is no action for the board to take. This was put on the agenda simply because it was continued to a date and time certain. and so everybody would be informed of what has transpired.
All right, thank you. I'll just go to public comment. And we have no one from the public apparently that is joining us this afternoon. So with that, I'll go back to the board, and there's no action to take. So that's essentially the end of that, right? Make sure, okay, well, there you go. All right, well, having said that, we are at the end of our meeting, and Supervisor Bushnell reminded me earlier this month that Earth Day is coming, and it's actually Thursday, but instead of doing an adjourning in memory of someone, we're going to adjourn in celebration of Earth Day, a day that inspires awareness of and appreciation for the Earth's environment. And also, you know, around the world, this is celebrated to support environmental protection. So with that, go out and enjoy Earth Day, and we'll see you next week.